Let's draw the eye in profile. So this is a male eye, and whenever you're beginning with an eye in profile, I want you to think in simple lines and shapes. So I'm gonna go ahead and draw this pretty large. I'm starting using an H pencil. You can also use a 2B pencil and just draw very lightly. Whenever I'm drawing, I always start with the big shapes first. If you check out the 10 steps to drawing that I've put together, the most important one we kick it off with is start from big to small. And the eye in profile tends to look like kind of a triangle with a curved angle where the front of the sphere of the eyeball is. And I think it's also really helpful and important to look at wherever you see the eyebrow coming up above the eye. And we're going to use what I call the pencil trick. This is the most important thing I think a budding artist can learn. That is using your pencil to gauge measurements and also angles and all kinds of good things. So I'm going to check, okay, this is how I've established on my paper, just looking at the height of the eye from the upper eyelid crease to the bag underneath the eye. I'm seeing a shape about yay big. How does that compare to the distance between the upper eyelid crease and the eyebrow itself? So looking at my photograph here, that's the height. Notice I got one eye closed so that I am seeing this more clearly. And then from the upper eyelid crease to the eyebrow, even the top of the eyebrow is a little bit less. So if this is that height, it's going to be a little bit less. Yeah, just about that much more. If it's not working for you, if your sighting skills are betraying you, just let it be wrong and keep doing it again and again and again. That's how you learn stuff. Okay, so I've got the distance here measured out, and I'm really looking at the negative space. Like, what is the empty area, the space between the eyebrow and this shape? I'm noticing quite a lot of space, a big gap between where his eye begins and the front of the eyebrow here. I'm gonna use my pencil trick again. So I'm comparing this line to the distance of where his eyebrow is going to begin. I'm seeing is coming up to about right here, a little bit in from the size of the pencil measurement that I got. Use your judgment. Okay, so the shape of the eyebrow seems to curve up and out a little bit and then come back down, much thinner here. Don't worry about getting it perfect. We are not drawing this eye at profile for the King of England or something who's gonna chop off your head if you don't do a good job. No pressure, you're learning to draw an eye profile, so don't be hard on yourself if this is not crazy accurate. Okay, so we'll come back to the eyebrow a little bit later, but we've got a general shape of where that's gonna go. Let's get back to the eye itself. Now, how big is the actual opening of the eye within that? I'm seeing it as perhaps a third of the eye is the actual white of the eye and the pupil and iris. So I'm gonna cut into this and I'm attempting a contour line. I'm gonna do the same thing at the bottom of his eye opening. I'm seeing something like this. It's okay if you make mistakes again. That's why we've got the eraser. I started making this line a little too far down. We are so tempted in the beginning to make the eye opening huge, but hold yourself back from that. Okay, so now I've got the opening of the eye, a suggestion of where the upper eyelid and the lower eyelid are. Let's go ahead and define a little bit more the actual details here. The thing not to do is to get lost in the details first and then realize all of your proportions were off. So details, here's the fun stuff. I'm gonna start by defining a little bit more the upper eyelid. And again, kind of contour drawing. I'm still using an H pencil. I'm gonna get a little bit darker with it though, just by adding more pressure. Where I see the end of the curve, you'll notice it doesn't go all the way to the tip of the outside of the eye, this triangle of the profile shape. But there is a lot of shadow and shading there, but it's not a hard edge, it's a soft edge. I'm gonna draw the pupil, and notice that it appears to be slightly inward. There's a whole little ledge here where the volume of the upper eyelid is. And there's a really soft edge over here. I don't see a hard edge line, but I notice that the lower eyelid does have a darker line right here, a little softer down there. I'm just gonna let it be soft. You don't have to draw a hard outline like a left brain trying to tell you, there's a line there, I know there's a line there, let me create a hard line. That's left brain thinking. Right brain thinking is drawing what you see, spatially reacting to what's there. So if you don't see much of a line there, don't draw a line there. It's one of the hardest shifts into right brain thinking you can make. Notice how at the lower eyelid, we've got another dark line, but it's not exactly where the end of the whites of the eyes are. It's quite a bit lower on this particular model. And scoots all the way out here. That's where his lower eyelid rim is. And that's where his eyelashes are gonna be drawn out from. Bag under the eye, dips low. And one thing I'm gonna do here is, instead of using the tip of my pencil, since this is such a soft edge, or not a hard, sharp line like so, but a soft edged kind of smudge, I'm using a different grip on my pencil, like this, instead of the way we're used to drawing the alphabet, like so, to get your tip of the pencil on the page. When I go like so, I can create a softer line and even smudge it if I want, or use a smudge stick. That's how that baby works. So I'm gonna do that to kind of give a suggestion of a shadow under here. As for the eye itself, the inside of the eyeball, I'm noticing the darkest dark of the pupil does not touch the outside of the eye, but appears to come in a little bit. It's an ellipse shape, about like so. That's unexpected. Your left side of the brain might not know that, and so it won't tell you to draw that correctly. So draw what you see. Pay attention to the negative spaces, the shapes around everything. And the iris appears to come down with a little curve here, just barely touching actually maybe not even touching at all, that lower eyelid crease, and then curve upward. And if I'm looking at the white of the eye, then if I draw the shape of the white of the eye correctly, then the iris will end up in the right spot, because if this shape is correct, then this shape must be correct. I'm even noticing a little bit of a shadow right here where the tear duct would be. So this is the essential line of the eye that we're gonna work with. You could at this point even draw in where you see the eyelashes if you see any. A little bit of a shape right here will be eyelashes. A lot of shading around here, beautiful hooded eyes on this model. Well, let's draw a suggestion of a bit more detail around where the eyebrow is gonna go. I'm noticing this shape that has a beautiful curve here, angles out, and then comes down. We'll give these lines more detail later. Looking at the negative space between the eyebrow and the eye itself, seems to be something like that. If you want to give a suggestion of the bridge of the nose at this point, where the outside of the nose is, you could use your pencil trick to say, okay, this is my usual go-to reference. If this is the width of the eye from the widest edge here to the widest edge of there, that's how wide the eye is, how does that compare to wherever the nose begins? And on this particular model, the eye is this big, it's almost the same distance. So if this is here, and this is the outside edge of his face that we're seeing, he's got quite a prominent nose. And the area that's coming in the most is on a vertical alignment. It's another handy way you can use your pencil trick is finding alignment. How do things compare in the way that they align or match up on a vertical axis and a horizontal axis? So this seems to be where his nose begins. Let's go ahead and switch to a number 2 pencil or a 3, whatever you have, 3B, 2B. And let's do a little bit of shading. So there are many different ways that you can shade. One thing that's lovely is, as I was demonstrating earlier, you can use the wide edge of your lead of your pencil and just smudge where you see the darker shadows. With a softer lead like this 2B pencil, it comes off really smoothly and nicely here. And I often just begin kind of mapping out. You can squint and say, well, where do I see darker shadows? Where do I see lighter shadows? One interesting shadow is the inside of the white of the eye. Don't leave that perfectly white. You can actually kind of leave it a little in the shade where the eyelashes cast a shadow into the white of the eye. Just because it's called the white of the eye doesn't mean you have to leave it perfectly white. So we can shade this more. If you notice as you're looking in this big picture way, kind of squinting, you might find mistakes that you made with your original line work. Like I'm thinking the outside of this eyebrow actually follows an angle about like so. You guys, why didn't you tell me? So I'm gonna continue the eyebrow out and adjust that line a little bit. So handy to have an eraser. But one thing that's nice is, since it's a wide eyebrow, I can actually leave some of those lines and use them to my advantage. So that works a little bit better. Double checking those angles now that I'm a little suspicious of myself. I can leave that there. You can see the value of starting light and then going darker. It lets you have a lot of time to fix your mistakes. And a little bit of shadow under the eye here, where those bags are. And squinting really helps to see where the lights and darks are. Of course, the eyebrow itself has eyebrow lines. Each individual hair is its own line. But if you want to start by shading just with the side of your pencil to get the shadows blended out here, we can come back and do the individual detailed lines later by just getting the overall light and dark kind of map first. You're gonna really help yourself out later on. It's got a whole dark eyebrow on this side, but I'll worry about that later. If you want to come in and smudge here to kind of lighten up some of the smudges you've made, we've got a little bit of a map of our values, the light and dark areas going on now. Some areas are very bright, like he's got a little highlight drops in right inside of his eye. I'm gonna erase that just so I leave that area nice and bright. I'm gonna switch to a 3B because I have it, but if you're still using a 2B, that's totally cool. Now we're gonna use the tip of our pencil to get the darker darks and really get the details in. Darkest area of the eye always is the pupil. So let's go ahead and find that darkest dark area and get it to its full power darkness. So I'm using quite a bit of pressure, pressing down, and that darkness matches pretty much the upper eyelid shadow here. It gets a little bit lighter in this corner. Dark but small eyelashes. We're using the male eye here. And I see a dark shadow, especially up here. I'm switching, as you can see, to the side of my pencil because it's not a thin line as we would make with the tip, but even though it's a darker value, still kind of a soft line. And that shadow extends all the way up, touching the eyebrow a little bit, but it is much darker here at the crease of the eye. Quite a bit of shadow around here, a little lighter here. Picking that up. This little triangle we drew earlier is a little bit darker. I'm just matching values. It's almost like a coloring book at this point. Where are the dark areas? Where are the light areas? He's got a little bit of a lighter area on the inside of his iris and a darker outline of the iris. Kind of light-eyed people, often you see that. A little darker in this lower eyelid where the eyelashes grow from. And on the inside of the eye where these eyelashes would be casting a shadow. This is so light and hard to see what's going on here. If you don't see a clear line, don't draw a clear line. Don't just make stuff up, just draw what you see. I'm gonna increase the shadow here using the wide edge of my lead, so it's not a sharp line, but just seen as a line, as a shadow, I should say. Looking for kind of the patterns I'm seeing. Dark, slightly lighter, slightly darker, slightly lighter. A little bit of a darker shadow right here. Getting darker in this corner. And one interesting thing, how often I get this? Maybe quite a bit. I'm seeing that this distance looks a little too far. I'm measuring it again. It seems that this distance would only bring the eyebrow to here. So I really had this off. So glad that happened though, because I want you to see what it's really like to draw an eye. And I hope that you are also making mistakes and fixing them as you go. So again, the fact that I haven't come in super heavy-handedly is going to really help me to redraw this as I go. I'm gonna use the side of my pencil again to fix that. And I wouldn't have to fix it. If I had left that angle slightly differently, it still would be somebody's eye. But one thing I wanna achieve here is the pattern of slightly darker around the eye. There's a highlight where the light catches this protrusion of the brow, and then it gets a little bit darker. And okay, so that seems like it's in the right spot. I'm gonna go ahead and get dark with the eyebrow. So we're really committing here. So I'm gonna shift the way I'm holding my pencil, as you can see, holding it farther back. So I can do kind of quick flicks with my wrist. I'm drawing with the wrist, not like this. And I can also shift if I want to a more wide angled, allowing the side of the pencil to create the lines kind of effect. Because I don't see a lot of clear, sharp lines here. So if you don't see an eyebrow hair, don't draw an eyebrow hair. I do see some more defined hairs up here. He's got a little bit of a clear eyebrow here, hair happening up here. Do that. And then press down even harder in any areas where you want to add more shadow. I'm coming in just really lightly using the tip of my pencil instead of the wide-edged way. I mentioned there are many different ways to shade. Another thing that we could have done is use hatching, which is just straight vertical lines neatly next to each other to create value. And those are pretty pleasing to the eye. I did that very lightly, but you can sort of tell. With skin, it's nice to use the side edge of your graphite because it's got such a soft texture and it kind of matches that there. This curve coming in here. This gets quite dark in here. Darker here. I'm gonna spare the kind of lighter highlight in here. Smudge is needed, or use your smudge stick if you don't like getting your hands dirty. Squint to see those light and dark patterns as you continue along. Smudge as necessary. You can see how much of this is just about the initial placing, the lines and shapes, finding the overall proportions, and then just matching values and making sure that the details match the patterns of light and dark that you see. Also edges, where do we see those sharp edges of a crisp, clear line? Where do we see a soft, smudgy line that maybe isn't a line at all? If you can find all those patterns using those elements of art, it all goes back to elements of art. Got that down, your drawing's gonna turn out just fine. I'm just gonna clean up some of these lines a little bit. And just for kicks, I wanna show you what the 8B pencil will do if you're using an 8B. Boom, boom, boom. And 8B is just so dark, it's gonna really pump up the values. So if you had something this dark, you could come up on your value scale a little bit. Actually, I was pressing down quite hard with my pencil, so I'm not seeing a huge difference, but could help like here. I'd like to have a darker shadow. Areas that we make darker will appear to be deeper, more recessed. So that's a handy way to show deep set eyes in this case. Well, there you have it, the eye profile, and some tips on drawing anything in general. I hope that yours turned out in a way that you're satisfied with, and please remember, it's all a process. I would love to see what you drew. So check out my free art school if you're not already in there, learn.10stepstodrawing.com, and you can post your artwork in there just like you would on a newsfeed in another social site. I'll be able to see it, put a comment, cheering you on, giving you any tips, learn.10stepstodrawing.com, and stay tuned for our next drawing video.